Hi, this is Gary with MACMOST.com. Let's take a look at editing substitutions on your Mac. MACMOST is brought to you thanks to a great group of more than 1,000 supporters. Go to MACMOST.com/Patreon. There you can read more about the Patreon campaign, join us, and get exclusive content and course discounts. So you may have noticed that sometimes when typing on your Mac, some text you type is automatically replaced with different characters. For instance, here in TextEdit, if I were to type 2 dashes like that and then wait or press space, notice how it converts to a longer M dash instead. Or if I type a quote, you can see how it converts to curly quotes like that. These are called substitutions, and you can find the controls for them in the Edit menu in almost any app where you type text. So here under Edit Substitutions, we can see the various type of substitutions that TextEdit uses. The list here will change depending upon which app you're using, but let's start here in TextEdit. First, you've got smart dashes, which we saw in action when we typed 2 dashes and it converted it to an M dash. We also saw smart quotes. If we were to turn one of these off, it would no longer work. So I can type 2 dashes and wait or space, and you can see it remains as 2 dashes. If we turn off smart quotes, we can type quote and you can see it remains just straight up and down quotes. You can still add curly quotes, by the way, if you want. The keys for that on the US keyboard is Option and then the left square bracket, and then Option Shift and the left square bracket. There's some other things here. For instance, let's turn on Smart Links. So now when we type something that looks like a URL, we can see it changes it to a clickable URL. If we use data detectors, then whenever we type something that looks like a phone number, an address, or date, we'll get this data detector if we move over it. You can see how it's outlined there, and I can click there and then it'll bring up the contact or I can call. For an address I can click here and it will bring up a map location. For a date I can click here and it will allow me to add a new event. These are some examples of data detectors. It's not really changing the text here at all. It's kind of a different type of substitution. It almost could be separate from the rest of this. Now you may also notice that sometimes when you type something it's replaced with something else entirely. For instance, if I were to type something and then parentheses C parenthesis like that, notice it automatically changes to a copyright symbol. That's a replacement, and it actually comes from a list in System Preferences under Keyboard, Text. You can see these text replacements and you can add your own. I've done many videos on this in the past. Here's that one that replaces parentheses C with the copyright symbol. And you could see some other ones here. And of course add your own. If I were to go to Edit, Substitutions, and turn off text replacement, that would no longer happen. Now what about this one? Substitutions, Smart Copy and Paste. So with that on, if you were to copy, say, a word and then paste it here, notice how it automatically added a space between thing and another. If I undo, you'll see there was no space there. If I were to put it right before a word and paste, you can see it automatically adds a space there as well. Automatically adding those spaces is what's called Smart Copy Paste. If I turn that off, you can see it doesn't do that. Now in TextEdit and many other apps, if you go to Substitutions, there's something called Show Substitutions. And that will actually bring up a little window that has all of these substitutions there, and you can use checkboxes to control them instead of through the menu. In addition, sometimes there are more options. For instance, smart quotes, you can choose the type of quotes. So here, for instance, I've got double quotes that are curved and single quotes, but I could change that to another style for another language for both double and single quotes. I could also turn these all on or off. I could go right to System Preferences to the replacements here if I want. And I have a Replace All and Replace in Selection. So let's say I've turned off text replacement and smart dashes. I'll do 2 dashes there and I'll do a copyright symbol and it didn't convert them. Well, if I turn these back on and select, I can do Replace in Selection, and you can see it will go back and look at all this text and add these substitutions in. Now there are ways to stop substitutions without having to change preferences. For instance, you can just undo. If I'll do 2 dashes here and space, you can see it changes to the M dash. But if I do Command Z to undo, it will undo that and have that selected. So now I can just use the arrow key, the right arrow key, to go forward, and then I can type something and it won't change this back. The same thing here with a replacement like that. An undo will give me back what I originally typed and then I can continue on. Now let's take a look at some other apps because the menu is going to be different for other apps. There'll be other options. Let's go into Notes, for instance. And in Notes, if we look under Edit, Substitutions, we'll find some of the same ones and some new ones. You can see here that Smart Lists and Smart Tags are an option. So what's a Smart List? Well, when you see that and you have that option, you can do something like a bullet. I'm going to use Option 8 for a bullet and type something like that. And it's going to assume I want a list. So when I hit Return, it changes the formatting of that line to a list and allows me to continue on another line. But I didn't have to remember that Option and 8 were the bullet. I could actually use Shift 8 for an asterisk and it will automatically convert that, you see, to a list like that. And other characters work as well. A dash and then type, and you can see how it automatically made that into a list. Also numbers, 1 and then a period, and then you could see now it's a numbered list. Now for Smart Tags, you may already be using these. If I do a hashtag and then I type a tag name, you can see it automatically converts it to a tag and adds it here. But if I were to turn that off, you can see that it will no longer do that. I can still create a tag there by control clicking it, 2-finger click on a trackpad, right click on a mouse, and convert to tag. If you find you need to use hashtags, maybe mention hashtags from another system, or you just like to use this for other purposes, then you may want to turn that off, knowing you can still create tags. Also notice that sometimes things don't always work perfectly. There's a lot of inconsistency between apps. For instance, here in Notes, I can make sure that Smart Copy and Paste is on, but if I copy this word and then paste it, notice it didn't add an extra space, and I won't do that before. So it seems that doesn't work very well in Notes. If we look in the Mail app when you're composing a new message, you'll find substitutions here as well, and you'll find a shorter list of them. In Safari, when you're filling out a form, you can use these as well, and you could see the standard ones there. And notice how the settings here are per app. So if you find Smart Quotes is not useful in Safari because you want to use straight quotes a lot of the time, you can have it off here, but it'll still be on in other apps. If you go to Pages and look at substitutions, you'll find some different ones here. There's Smart Quotes and Smart Dashes, but you're also going to find Smart Web and Email Links, so it's going to include email in addition to regular URLs, and also Smart Phone Number Links. And you'll find one for text replacement here, but it works a little different in Pages. So in Pages, if I were to use something like the copyright substitution there, you could see it works. But Pages has its own set of text replacements. If I go into Preferences, Auto Correction, then I'll see down here replacements just for Pages. So this is separate, and you can see there's the copyright symbol there, and there are a few others. If we look in System Preferences and Keyboard, Text, we'll see these replacements here. So notice, for example, I have E7 is an email address. It's a custom one that I've added. So if I type E7 space, you could see it replaces it with that from System Preferences. In Pages Preferences, that's not here. Now, if I turn this off, Symbol and Text Substitution, then I'll see that it is also off here, but the system ones still work. Doesn't seem you can turn them off in Pages because the setting actually refers to Pages' own text replacement. So one thing to look out for with those check marks in Edit Substitutions is that they don't always work 100% of the time. I've already shown you in Notes and in Pages 2 examples of where they don't work quite as you would expect. Also, another odd thing is if you go into System Preferences and then Keyboard and back to Text here, you'll find some other things here on the right. First, you'll find Use Smart Quotes and Dashes. This is a universal setting that doesn't change how the individual apps work. So you can assume that this only works in apps that don't have any Smart Quotes and Dashes set anywhere. Sometimes it's really hard to figure out if this does anything for an app you're using. Always go with the Edit menu first and use that to customize it instead of here. There's also a really useful substitution right here that's not part of the Edit menu in any app. Add a period with a double space. So instead of typing a period, just do space, space, and you can see it puts a period and space there. And the ability to capitalize words automatically and correct spelling automatically, they're also here, but they may have settings in individual apps that override them. You would find those under spelling and grammar. You've got correct spelling automatically right here. So whether you've learned something here that you want to start using or this explains some previous behavior that now you want to shut off, I hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, click the thumbs up button below to let me know. I publish new tutorials each weekday. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out.